Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Elephants. I'm your host, Destiny Farley, and today I'm interviewing Savannah Tuttrup. Savannah was born and raised in Iowa and moved to Las Vegas when she was 24 years old with her younger sister, who she has been raising for basically her entire life. Savannah and her sister have the same mom and different dads, but their mom struggles with addiction, so she's been, struggling with her sobriety for basically their entire lives. Mind you, her and her sister are only 9 years apart, so Savannah stepped up to take care of another child, another human being, basically as just a child herself. I asked her to come on the show today to describe what it has been like navigating a difficult relationship with her mom and stepping up to be a parent from a very young age. We all know how important our sibling relationships are, but Savannah really takes this to another level because she took her sister out of a toxic environment, knowing all the sacrifices that would entail on her end. So Savannah, can you just briefly introduce yourself and then start by telling me a little bit about what it was like growing up for you with your parents, both your mom and your dad, and what those different relationships look like?
So, hi, I'm Savannah. I'm from Iowa. I've been out in Vegas since I was 24. I'm the oldest sibling of 6 younger siblings. 2 of them are step siblings, but I consider them my full siblings. Basically, I lived with my mom majority of the time in my childhood with my 3 other siblings that are her children. And then I would go to my dad's like every other weekend. He wasn't really around in my life until I was about 7. Like he was there, but he also struggled with addiction. So he would pick me up and I'd be with my grandma and my aunt. And then that would be my weekends there until he became sober when I was 7. And then my mom struggled on and off through our whole childhood with alcohol and drugs, so she was there but not exactly the best, but yeah.
Okay. And then I didn't know that your dad had also struggled with it. As far as that goes, like, so that there was a time in your childhood where they were both struggling with it then, like early on when, like, you would say you were like a toddler, or you said until you're 7, were they both struggling with addiction up until that point?
Yeah, so my mom and dad met in high school. She was 16, he was 19, and they had me at that time. So they were both just young high schoolers partying. My mom started also drinking at like a really young age. I think she struggled just with her parents also having addiction issues. She started drinking when she was like 12. So started from a really early time, but yeah, so they had me basically as teenagers, and then my grandma took care of me a lot, but yeah, until I was like 7, it was just both of them drinking all the time and not a whole lot of parental guidance.
Right. And at that age, could you tell? I mean, probably not if you're 7 years old, but could you feel like the absence? Did you know something was wrong? Was there any kind of like behavior that was like scary to you as a child? Because your sister that lives with you now wasn't born yet at this time, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys are 9 years apart.
So it was just me until I was 5, and then I had my brother. He was born when I was 5, so it was the 2 of us. But back then, I don't remember a whole lot when it was just me, except for like there would just be bad situations I would be put in. My mom would bring like random guys over and like leave me home alone, and just be like scary situations where I have like glimpse of remembering. But I didn't really start remembering or noticing that it wasn't like normal until I started school and other like kids were not experiencing the same things I would. And then like I would often have like DHS come in and they would visit me at school and ask like about my home life, and I would get pulled out of class because they were like concerned about my mom, and my dad would call to try to like get me taken away from her so he could have full custody. But that was when I kind of started noticing like, okay, this isn't like your typical
American
life.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that your dad was calling to try to get custody of you and things. So he sobered up when you were 7, around that age, or what? When?
Yeah, so he also was struggling with the same things as my mom, and he got into a really bad car accident. It was actually his 3rd DUI that he had gotten. So he committed himself to an inpatient facility to get better and basically quit everything. He was smoking like cigarettes, drinking, doing other drugs, and quit everything cold that day. and has never looked back. He's still
sober.
Yeah, still sober today at 21 years. So
nice.
Really
Good
proud of him for that.
Yeah, good for him. So once he was sober, did you feel like you had more support or, more guidance? Did you feel like a shift in your childhood once he started to step up and become sober? Or what did it look like with him trying to get custody of you guys?
I think when I was that young, it took me a while to realize something was wrong with my mom. I just loved her and never looked at her as being a bad person back then. Which, I mean, she's still not a bad person necessarily. She just struggles. But I didn't realize how much of an impact it was going to have on my childhood and my development and everything. But I feel like my dad wanting to take me was almost like an attack against my mom is how I felt when I was little. So, and she would also tell me if you don't tell these workers that I'm not drinking, I'm taking care of you, you're never going to see me again. And that would be traumatizing. Yeah. I'm okay, if I don't lie to these people, I'm never going to see my mom again. So that would be scary. And I still wanted to be around her then too, as much as everything was chaotic.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, you just love your parents. You're not,
you
don't know any better. You just want your mom. You want your dad. Even if they're hurting you, you don't see it that way. You don't realize that they're hurting you, Okay, and how long did he try to get custody of you guys for?
There was a couple times when I was younger. I want to say there was 3 different instances. One was again when I was 14, and they basically decided I was old enough. Actually, maybe I was 11. Because my mom was sober when I was 14. But yeah, they basically decided I was old enough to make my own decision of who I wanted to stay with. And back then, all of us siblings were all living together at my mom's, and then we would all go to our dad's on the same weekend, except for my one sister. So it was just kind of the normal thing at the time, and I decided I still wanted to stay living with her. So
okay. What age do you feel you realized that it's a real problem and you were I can't do this anymore?
So she had a really good sober streak. She started seeing my youngest sister's dad and turned her life around. She was going to meetings, just kind of was the picture perfect mom I had been wanting my whole life, and was there for us. We did so much as a family, and everything was good for 4, almost 5 years. And then when I turned 16-ish, I started to notice a change in her behavior, but it wasn't a drastic she went straight back into being crazy. It was just I would notice and pick up okay, I can tell she's been drinking, and she would hide it and lie about it and basically keep it from everyone. But it started catching up with her, and it was to a point where there is no hiding how she was. And I came home from school one day and she was holding my sister, and I could tell she was not well. My sister was a baby at the time. She fell with her in the kitchen and dropped her, and I had to call the police, and she was obviously not very happy with me for that. And that's when things just kind of turned into a downward spiral. And she ended up moving out. We were all living with my youngest sister's dad in a house, and she moved out, and my brother moved in with his dad. Me and my youngest sister stayed there. So it was the 3 of us, and then my sister, who I take care of, and my mom just kind of moved out, and we're done. And I lived there by myself for 4 months, just with them. And then I was on vacation with some family on my dad's side, and got a call that all my stuff was out on the side of the road because him and my mom had gotten into a fight. So then I was just okay, guess I'm just going to figure it out on my own. I moved in with my best friend and her family, and they basically took care of me for the rest of my senior year and helped me move to college. And then I've been on my own since then.
So when you say your mom got sober for a little bit, was it hard for you to see her get sober and do better and be the version of her that you wanted her to be, and then have it taken away from you again when she relapsed?
Yeah, I think that was just really traumatizing in general for all of us. I think my little brother also took it like the hardest mentally, just because of his age at the time and like seeing our mom like be so good, because we really were like great family, like picture perfect, everything we'd wanted. And I feel like even still to this day, like when we try to have conversations with our mom about it and tell her like we just want that person back because you're not yourself when you're not sober, it's hard, I feel like. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we've talked before, and like I had asked you, like, is this stuff like traumatizing for you? Because you talk about it very casually, which I'm sure is just because you're grown now and that was your life and there's nothing you can do about it and you can't change who you are. But, you know, you wear it well. So, you know, you told me about how it was harder when you were younger than it is now, just because it's kind of like your norm and you're used to it and you're like, oh, that's just mom. But can you share, you know, whatever you're comfortable sharing, some of the experiences that you dealt with when you were young that were like really difficult for you to navigate, or that really made you emotional, or that you like when you think back on your childhood and you think back of living with her and what those experiences were like? What were some of the like the hardest things that you went through, or some of the ways that you felt like the biggest gap from her and like not having a mom around or something like that, you know?
I would say back when I was younger, and like I said, a lot of these memories are like in and out, but my mom would be in a lot of abusive relationships, which I think also fueled her issues with addiction. And she'd just be around men who were hitting her. And there was like a guy she had been seeing at one time who just used to hurt her like really bad. And that would always scare me. Like I would see her and she'd be like covered in bruises, like bleeding. And there was one time where they were drinking, fighting, and she like picked me up out of my bed, and he like still was beating her while she was holding me because she thought like he would stop if he had picked me up. But
You remember this, or?
I remember bits of it. Yeah. I was super young at the time. I want to say I was like 4 or 5, but and my mom also like has brought it back up. But yeah, I feel like that was like a really scary time and like one of my like first memories of something traumatic like that. But yeah,
What about like being left home alone? Like, were you left home alone for a long time, or like did you know she was gonna come back, or where is she going when she's leaving you by yourself?
typically it would be more like she would like make friends at a bar or something, bring people to the house, and then want to go back out. There was one time, I want to say I was in 3rd grade, and I had a friend sleeping over, and then she just left us with like this random guy who was like 50 years old. She met at a bar, and he was also obviously not a sober person, and like started coughing in his sleep, and then just got up and walked out of our house into the cornfield behind our house, and I don't know what happened to him.
Oh my God, this is like really not normal stuff. Like, not in a negative way, but
Yeah.
you know, you just talk about it so casually and it's like it's not.
I feel like I like laugh about it now because I'm just like, that really happened.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, you and your sister are 9 years apart. Do you feel I don't know how long she spent in that environment with your mom. Like, do you feel like she could understand what was going on too, or did you try to like shield her from it or protect her from it?
I want to say out of all of us, she actually had it like the worst from my mom. Like the most like my mom gets really like mean when she's not sober, like will tell us like we're terrible kids, she wishes she never had us, like just will say like mean things that a parent doesn't usually say to a kid and that she wouldn't say if she wasn't like under the influence of these things. But my sister ended up stuck with her after I moved out, pretty much from between the time I was 17 to 24, and she was just stuck with my mom all the time. Like I had the escape of going to my dad's. Same with my brother, he moved in with his dad. Our other sister moved in with her dad, and my sister had nowhere, and it was just her and my mom. So I feel like she really suffered the most, and my mom would get physical with her, and she also like just had a lot of like behavioral issues when she was younger, which I think also stemmed a lot from what we went through. So the two of them together was not a good match, and I wasn't there like to protect her, and she also felt like, you know, all of us abandoned her when she was like at that age, because we were together our whole lives, and then it was just her and my mom, and my mom was really bad at that time, so.
Yeah. Because her dad's not in the picture whatsoever, right?
Yeah. So my mom was actually like seeing someone when she had my sister. Things were good. And drinking will make you not necessarily a faithful person. So a different guy ended up being my sister's dad. And we found that out when she was about 3. So she didn't have a relationship with him. He really didn't want too much to do with her. They've met since then now. I don't want to talk too much about like their dynamic, but he's not really like in the picture at all. So
okay, so it was really just kind of like her and your mom.
mm-hmm.
How did you guys end up reconnecting? Like, how did because obviously you live together, she's out here with you now.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you guys reconnect after she moved in with your mom?
So we were like always close, all of us like siblings. We never like went out of touch. And she knew whenever things were going bad that she could call me, but I was in college, and so I was about 45 minutes away from our hometown. So when things would get bad, she would call me and be like, I need help, whatever, this, that. I would call my grandma or my friends, try to get her picked up and like put somewhere safe for the night if I could. But it was, yeah, when I was like 24, she finally was, it's this thing called like a China petition, which is basically like where your family goes in and is like, this child needs to be removed from this parent. And my mom would usually fight them to keep us, but at this point she's just like so far in, she didn't care and just signed and was like, yeah, I don't want to take care of her anymore. I don't want to be a parent. So at that point, my sister became what's called like a ward of the state. And she basically, the state is like up to position her into where they think she should go for the rest of her like child life. So originally she was placed with my aunt, which was not necessarily the best place for her either. It's just, she has like her own kids and it was like a small place, and just didn't have like the means to like deal with my sister and her age. I mean, she's still a teenager at the time who's been struggling her whole life to fit in somewhere, and just wasn't like where she belonged. The other option was foster care, but she just really wanted to come out with me. And I had just moved to Vegas, so I'd been here for like 4 months at the time, just getting adjusted. And I just decided, like, yeah, I'm ready to do it. I told her, I was like, you can come stay out here. And we went back and forth with the state, trying to get it figured out, just because it was like an interstate child placement. It was really complicated. It took about 11 months to get everything finalized. So I'd have like my caseworker in Iowa, my caseworker in Nevada. They'd come, like, make sure I had like a safe home environment, a room, like I had income, could take care of her. And then she would fly out every so often for visits until it was fully finalized where I was able to be her guardian. And then, yeah, she's been here since.
So are you her legal guardian on paper?
Yes.
Okay. Is she, how old was she when she moved out here?
She started doing like the in-betweens when she was 15, and then was 16 when everything got finalized.
Okay. And how old is she now?
19.
19. Okay. Yes. So she's an adult in the eyes of the law now, right? Okay. So you explained to me, backtracking just for 1 second, you explained to me that your dad tried to fight for custody but never won. And it's because, was it because there was nothing like documented of her using drugs, or because when the workers would come and talk to you, you would vouch for your mom, or what made it difficult for him to get custody of you guys?
It was a mix of that, and then my mom also was able to make herself look really good on paper. And she would, whenever there was like a court-ordered sobriety, like she would get in trouble or get arrested. Like she also has multiple DUIs, so basically you have to like log in, and if you were drinking and you dropped on a test, like a random test, you would have to go to jail. So whenever she was like in these court mandated sobriety times, like things were good. And so a lot of the times the court system sides with the mom because they don't want to take kids away from like a mom. And she would have like the lulls where she was good, and especially when it was court ordered, she would be like perfectly fine. She'd get her stuff together. And she also had like a paralegal degree, so she knew a lot of people in like the law field. She was like really good friends with her attorney. So those things would kind of like work to her advantage.
Was that frustrating for you guys or for your dad? Like,
Definitely for my dad. Yeah, my dad hated it, but he just kind of accepted it. You know, it is what it is. And now he sees, like, I see it for what it was now too. But yeah, it's just like back then we just all wanted to be together is what I knew my whole life, so just felt normal.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys, like, would she let you go to your dad's to visit, like, if she didn't want to be there? Or did she, like, not want you to see your dad? Did they have, like, a bad relationship where they would talk poorly about each other? Or?
No, it was never any of that. They never really were, like, together. So it was more just, like, a co-parenting. But she didn't mind when we went to our dad's. If we ever wanted to see them, like, we were more than welcome to go there. So that was always fine. And like when we'd have like birthdays, all of our dads would come over and we'd all be together and it was always fine.
Okay. Really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Christmas was always a fun one.
Yeah. How is your relationship with your mom today? Like
currently we're not speaking. We haven't been for a couple months. She's just not doing well. She's been seeing the same really toxic guy for the last like 5 years, and it's been really bad with her for like the last 5 years. I have like a hard time looking at her just because she doesn't look the same as like what I remember. Like all of that really takes a toll on your body, and she's just like really skinny. She's just not right. But yeah, she came out and visited here, and she had called me. Another like manipulation thing that she would do to get a relationship with us would be she'd call us and say she was going to kill herself. And that would happen often. And so she called me and my sister, and she basically was like, I'm done. Your mom's not going to be here anymore. Went on this and basically was waiting for us to say, like, you can come out and see us for a couple days. So she seemed fine. She said she was sober at the time, which I knew if she was sober, it had only been for like a week or a couple days, but she seemed fine. Like it wasn't the normal, like there's like a tone you can hear in her voice when you know like things are off. But she seemed like she was doing good. She was so excited. And she like packed all her stuff, came out here, and I told her like we're not going to be drinking. We're not going to be going to like the casino because she had been out and visited one time before and it just didn't go well. And that was shortly after we'd first moved here. I was like, we're not going to have a repeat of that incident. So I called her when she went to the airport. All was good. The guy who had dropped her off, who's been trying to help her get sober for the last couple of years, said like everything was great. Then when I went to the airport, I could not find her anywhere. And it took like 45 minutes. She had like some random lady call me and say like, your mom's lost. And then when I finally found her, she's like already like very obviously drunk and unwell.
And this was recent?
Yeah, this was, I want to say January, February this year. And yeah, I just knew it was going to be downhill from there. So I had only bought her a one-way flight because I knew if things went bad, I was just going to get another one and drop her off and send her back. So it was okay. For like the first day, we like hung out, did some like crafts, like little shopping, whatever, but she just kept wanting to drink, and she gets like really sick also when you're an alcoholic and like you're not getting alcohol. It can kill you if you don't have it. So I got her like a couple like little small things to drink just to like get her by. But she went off and disappeared in the middle of the night and would come back with like a bunch of shooters, and she's just like, there's no talking to her, no communicating, and she gets really aggressive when you argue with her. So she was here for like 2 days, and I was like, okay, like time for you to go. The last day was terrible. She woke up and was just like, oh, I'm leaving, going to the casino, disappeared. At the time, me and my sister were getting ready to move to a new place, so we had an apartment showing, and I was like, well, whatever, if you want to like go wander around on the streets, we have to go look at this apartment, so you can make your choices to do that. And her flight was the next morning. Woke her up. She somehow was drinking right away in the morning. I woke her up at like 9. The flight was at 1. Got her to the airport at like 11. My sister walked her in, put her in line. At like 12:30, I got a phone call from the police, and they were like, hey, we have your mom. Like, she gave us this number. Can you come pick her up? And at that point, I was just like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I can't. And I can hear her in the background. She's like yelling and like being crazy. I was like, no, I cannot come pick her up. So she ends up getting taken to the hospital by them. They actually didn't like arrest her or anything. They just took her to the hospital. She was at the hospital all day that day. So she missed her flight that I had gotten her. And she took like 10 hours before she was sober enough to be released. And she just called me and was just like nasty on the phone. Like, I missed the flight. I was sick. Like, you're just going to leave me here at the hospital. And I ended up going to pick her up, kept all her stuff locked in the car, and took her to the airport again the next day and put her on the flight. And she was just not nice the whole time about it. And we haven't talked a whole lot since.
Do you worry about because obviously it's a complex relationship, so do you worry about like getting a call that she's like passed away, or were like overdrank and had alcohol poisoning? Is that like a frequent thought on your mind?
So me and my siblings talk about this a good amount. I feel like we've all kind of like accepted that she's not her anymore and that like it's gonna happen at some point. Not sure when it will be, and obviously we all hope she gets better, but I feel like it's just come to a point where there's like nothing for her to want to get better for anymore. Like, it used to be like us and having a relationship with us. Now she's just like doesn't even care to have a relationship with us. When she does finally want to talk to us, she just tells us like she hates her life, she's miserable, her kids hate her, nobody wants to be around her, and she doesn't care about anything. So I don't know what it would take to like get her to a point where she actually wants to like do something and be better.
You have to love people from a distance like that. You
Yeah.
know, it's heartbreaking too, because you want them, you see the potential of what they could be, because you got to experience her when she was sober and she was a good mom, so that exists in her. And when you talk about her parents also struggling with addiction, like, I mean, it's like generational trauma that just passes down. So like deep down that there's really nothing that she could have done either. Like, that's all she knew. But I mean, you beat it. Like, do any of your other siblings struggle with addiction, or?
No, I feel like all of us were like so traumatized by what we experienced that like, I mean, we drink. Like, at first I was terrified to drink. I thought that was going to be like the worst thing ever in my life. And when people like started drinking when I was younger, I was like, oh, you guys are gonna like go off the edge. Like, just thought it was terrible. But I like to drink. I like to have a good time. I just think like everything's in moderation. And if you like keep your priorities in check and don't overdo it. I know like alcoholism is like something that can be genetic based and really runs deep in my family. And so I always just try to like keep it to a minimum. Like, it's like a social thing, like, or like I'll have like a cocktail at dinner or whatever, but it's not like every single weekend I need to go out and be in the club Thursday to Sunday. So,
well, I mean, we work at the club,
yeah.
so technically, but that's
yeah.
like interesting to me, because you work in an environment where it's kind of ironic. You work in an environment where you're selling alcohol to people, and you come from this background. So that's why I was wondering if it's, if it has any. It sounds like you were worried about building a healthy, I don't know if there is a healthy relationship with alcohol when it's not healthy for you, but it sounds like you kind of were trying to manage that relationship because of what happened with your mom, and you don't feel like any temptation or any issues with working at the club or anything like that. Like,
I feel like also too a lot of how I grew up has like driven me into work. So my mom basically made me start working when I was 14 and paying a lot of my own bills back then and providing for myself from a young age. So I just love to work, love to make money, and love to be like the best that I can be at my job. So I just never want to like fall. Like, obviously people, are always like, oh, take a shot with us, like have some champagne. I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, I have my water in the back. But I feel like I'm just like really able to separate the two. And like, if I have like a night off and I know I don't have to work the next day, like, sure, go out, have a good time, but I don't ever like to like mix the two together.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say you remind me of myself in a lot of ways because since I'm going to be transparent with you and I don't want you to, think any way about it or anything, and I'm guilty of like making assumptions about people, right? My first impression of you is very different than how I look at you now, right? But regardless, I feel like you have always been impressive to me because real recognizes real. Like I can tell when someone is a hard worker, when someone has that perfectionist personality. So since I met you, you've been very like on top of your stuff. Very like I need to do it the right way. I need to do it the best way. I want to be better at it than anybody else. I want to like I recognize that in other people. And for you to have that personality coming from the environment that you came from is, it's hard to do, and it could be a trauma response too. It could be you, trying to overcompensate. And, there's a bunch of psychology on if your parent didn't show you the love that you needed, especially as a toddler, especially in those developmental years. You begin to think that love is something that you have to earn and you have to work for it. And maybe if I accomplish this or do that, maybe that will be enough to make them love me or to make them change or for them to see that I'm worth loving. And I don't know if that's like your situation, if you felt that way, but, you came from an environment where you didn't have role models. You didn't have an example of what it looked like to be, necessarily successful or to be loving or understanding or compassionate. And you are all of those things, And so, like, that is a part of you that I feel like people don't necessarily see right off the bat, And I especially recognize myself in you because I feel like I can tell that you get really upset if you feel like you failed at something or you feel like you did something wrong or if someone is upset at you or mad at you or whatever the case may be. Like I'm that exact same way because I work so hard to be good at everything I do, whether it's my job, school. Did you graduate with like straight A's and stuff too? Like, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Literally the exact same.
Yeah.
Relationships. Like if I feel like I'm failing in any way or if I get yelled at, like it actually, I may not respond that way on the outside, but it actually, like I internalize it deeply. And I'm like, fuck, I messed up. I messed up.
Can't sleep. You're like laying up like, oh.
We're like our own worst critic.
Yeah.
Like there's like a internal voice inside my head that's like a bully. Like that is just so hard on me saying it's not enough. Like, a 98%, like that's the minimum. That's the standard. Anything else is not acceptable. Like it's hard. It's like a battle within your own head. Do you feel like you were like trying to earn your parents' love, or do you think that that's unrelated and you would have been this way no matter what?
I don't necessarily know. I feel like I've always been kind of that way where I just like seek out like that affirmation and it just like feels good to like make other people like happy with the work that you do and like also just to like do things for other people. I feel like too, it's like you are getting that validation that you would normally get from a parent. Yeah. But I would also still get that from them. Like even now with my mom, how she is, she'll still tell me like how proud of me she is. And she originally never wanted me to have my sister. She thought it was like the worst idea in the world. And she fought me on it really hard. And this last time, even though we had the situation we had, she still said like, I'm so proud of you. And, you did everything that I said you couldn't, and it's definitely been the best situation for your sister. But what you're saying about like being a perfectionist too, I feel like the first like couple years of having my sister, like the first 2 was like really hard because I was also still trying to balance like working multiple jobs, helping her through school, taking care of her, and I just was like so overloaded. And she would always come to me and be like, Savannah, you do not have to be perfect all the time. And she would just like beat that into me. And she's kind of helped me like try to be like more accepting of it's okay to not be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And that helped our relationship a lot too.
Oh, that's good to hear. How else do you feel like your relationship with your mom has affected you as an adult? Like, do you feel like it has played into your choice with like romantic relationships? Do you feel like it's affected your relationship with other women? Has it made you more or less inclined to have kids? Like, what other ways do you see it manifest in your daily life?
Yeah, so I definitely think the kids part is a big factor, and not just the relationship with my mom, but also just having my sister made me like less inclined to like pursue romantic relationships, just because like at the end of the day, even still now, it's like she's still my priority over everything. Like work, her, making sure the bills are paid, we have food on the table, roof on our head comes before anything. So when like guys will ask me out and be like, "Oh, like you're so busy, like you can't even find a day for me." I'm like, "No, my days are booked. I
I'm a
have
mom.
this, like, and on my 2 off days, I'm gonna hang out with my sister." Like, so sorry, like that just is what it is. Yeah, if you want to do a date, it might be a month from now, but I also just like am not that interested. I mean, sure, like I like go through my phases where I'm like, yeah, it'd be nice to like have somebody at the end of the day, but I'm like really close with all my siblings. I have a really good relationship with them. And if I find like the right person who stumbles upon me at the right time, yeah. But for now, I'm just kind of chilling. Don't mind. But yeah, the kids thing, I feel like when I was younger, I thought I would have like 3 kids by now. And now I'm like, I'm so glad I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever considered therapy or felt like you needed therapy because of everything that you went through?
I used to do therapy a lot when I was younger, especially with like the dynamic between my mom and my dad and going back and forth. They thought it was like pretty important for us to all go to therapy. So we'd go to like family therapy and then we'd each have like our own individual therapists. But I also noticed just with like being a perfectionist, like I wouldn't actually use the therapy. I would just kind of like tell them what they wanted to hear. And I'm like, okay, this isn't really doing anything for me. I think now if I like went back and did it, it would be a different experience. But I noticed back then it was just like, okay, I'm just saying what I want to like make sure everybody's happy. But
yeah. Backtracking a little bit again. When you picked up and like moved out here, how old were you? 24? What did that look like? Did you have to save up money? Was your dad sad that you were leaving? Like, was your sister like sad that you left because you said she joined you later, right? So was she sad that you left? Like, what did that whole experience look like from start to finish?
So I was kind of going through like a bad breakup, like just toxic relationship. And I wasn't like taking the best care of myself. I was kind of like going out too much and just like around like the wrong people at that time. And I was working like a corporate job. I was miserable. I was like salary position, working like 80 hours a week, underappreciated, like bad company. Just didn't enjoy it. And I just woke up one day and I was like, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah.
And I booked a flight to Vegas instead of going to work. And I came out here by myself. And then work called and was like, where are you? I was like, I'm actually never coming back. Sorry. And quit my job. And then 2 days later was like the start of the pandemic. So I was like in Vegas. In Vegas, like March 13th. And they're like, the whole world's like shutting down. So I like flew back super quick and just there was like nothing to go back to. So we were all just kind of like hanging out. And I stayed back home again for like 2 months. And then I was like, okay, there's nothing going on here. I'm not working. I would rather like go out there and be not working. So I booked Airbnb. It was pretty affordable. I had some money saved already. And then also like we were all getting paid through that pandemic as well. So booked an Airbnb. I did like a shared house with this lady who did like housekeeping. So I stayed with her for a month and I just went and bought like the cheapest laptop I could find and applied to like 50 jobs a day until somebody called me back. And then I worked like a little fast food job for like 3 weeks. They like gave me a little paper that said I made more money than I did so I could sign an apartment lease. And then I was here and just kept applying until I like got into the position I wanted to be in.
And then was 8 Lounge the first job like where you really started making good money? Or was there something before that?
My first like decent job, I did like beverage cart on a golf course, which was fun, but it was like in a retirement community, so not like great money, but it was
Yeah.
still fun.
Yeah.
And then I started dealing blackjack too. So I worked and dealt blackjack, and I did that for like a year and a half. And then I did the auditions for 8 Lounge, and that was my first cocktail position. So it was actually a lot harder to get a cocktail position here than I thought, being like
Yeah.
somebody who like literally didn't know anybody out here. But then I went to the 8 auditions, and once they like I finally was able to get like face to face with someone and like talk to them about like everything I knew, they like loved my product knowledge, my personality, and they're like, "Yep, you're on the team." So
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, people don't realize, for everything negative that people have to say about Las Vegas, like the employment opportunities here and the way that, you know, you can come here and kind of start your life anew if you really want to. I've talked to plenty of people. I had an old manager. I used to work at Black Tap. It's a burger restaurant in the Venetian. And I had a manager there that, because people have a lot to say about the industry, right? And I get it. Like 100% I get it. But he was saying, I will never have anything like negative to say about the industry because I was in $10,000 of credit card debt and I was able to pay it off in a year because I was working as a manager at a nightclub where he was bussing. I don't even remember what he did. But it's like there is a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people don't know that. So what made you pick Vegas?
Honestly, I don't know. Like, I came out here when I was 21 with my mom, and then me and my girlfriend came out here in 2020 for the Super Bowl. Just went to like a watch party. We were just kind of like wandering around and like meeting people, and like I was just kind of looking at like all the people doing the like cocktail serving, because at the time I was the AGM at like a lounge restaurant, but I knew I wanted to get back to like the serving side of it because it was just more fun to me. And I was like looking at everybody. I was like, I feel like I could do this. Like, I feel like I would fit in here. And everyone was like, yeah, okay, Sav, you're crazy. Like, small town Iowa, just, I was like, no, I think I'm going to do it. And just decided to do it.
You know, it takes a lot of courage, like so much courage to do that. Like to actually pull the trigger and uproot your entire life and come out here by yourself. And so I hope that you're gracious with yourself when you think back on that situation and everything that you've been through and the fact that you were able to pull yourself out of it and put yourself in a position not just by yourself but also with your sister and create a better life for yourself. I've been in a place where earlier this year, like I've never been in a place mentally as bad as I was the last probably year of my life. And I was at that point where I was like, I'm thinking about just picking up and moving, like, and just going, you know. And I was thinking about moving to California. I have family there. I have family that like I could lean on, that I could stay with until I get my feet like on the ground. Like I had a support system that I could go to, and I was still too scared to do it. I was still like, no, this is my home. Like, you know, given Iowa and Vegas are different, like there are still things here that are good for me and especially for like my job and things like that. But I was too scared to do it. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't think about picking up and leaving and just throwing myself into the unknown. And like you did that. And like there's not a lot of people that do that or that have that experience under their belt, you know, because I would imagine that getting up and doing something like that is scary. And that it's so satisfying seeing that you did it and you came out okay on the other end. Like that has to build some resilience in you, I'd imagine.
I originally had told like my dad, especially because he was like, I'd rather you go than not go and stay here and regret it. But I had said like, oh, I'm just going to go for like a year or 2 years and make a bunch of money and then come back home. And then like a year turned into 2 years. Then I was like, I'm probably just actually not coming back ever. I was like, I'll come visit you guys. But it's like the snow and the cold and the financial cap and just a lack of freedom all around there. I was like, nope, I don't miss it. This is more my vibe where I belong. Yeah.
Do you like it here? Are you happy here?
Yeah, I like it here a lot. I feel like I've made like a good friendship group. I feel like when I first was here, it was really hard. Like I just didn't find like my spot yet, and I was still in like the transition of like trying to figure out like what I wanted to do work wise and also the transition with my sister and like figuring out my finances with supporting 2 people instead of 1. But now that I feel like I've like found my little place, I'm good. I don't think I want to be here forever. I feel like at some point I'll want to like either like move out to California or Arizona or something. Because I don't necessarily know if I want to like do it, like raise a family here. But at the time, I'm comfy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's like a
experience.
good area for like our age.
Yeah.
Like we can just make a bunch of money and make a good connections and like have more of the freedom to figure out what we want to do like long term.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is like my home. I was born and raised here. So, and I've never lived anywhere else. So, for me, I don't know. Like when I was younger, I was like anxious to leave and anxious to get somewhere else, especially like California. But now that I'm, like exploring a career in sports journalism and I'm making good money waitressing and like I'm going back to school. My school is paid for because it's in-state tuition and I have graduate assistantship, and so I get to pocket money while I'm in school, and it's becoming a sports mecca, and it's exciting and stimulating, but it's not so big as like in LA or in New York where it's like overwhelming and you feel like it's so hard to like connect or whatever the case may be, So now I'm like, damn, am I ever gonna leave? Am I ever gonna escape?
The sports is like booming here, so definitely good opportunities coming from that.
Do you feel like your sister understands and appreciates everything you've done, or do you feel like she's still kind of young to be processing all of it? Have you guys had conversations about that?
So I think when she first came out here, it was just like really tough. Like just if I would go out and drink at all, she would get like so triggered and think like I was like abandoning her, I wasn't gonna come home. And then like that in turn, like with my anxiety and like knowing how she was reacting, I would just avoid coming home because I didn't want to fight with her. And so it was just like a cycle where like I would get worried about upsetting her, and then she would get mad at me, and we would just go back and forth. And we finally like figured out a balance and a way to communicate with each other where like if either of us is like feeling some type of way, we can just like sit down and talk about it, so we don't have those issues anymore. And I think now she like kind of looks back on like how tough the first like couple years were and how hard she was on me, and she's like, you were like trying your best and you aren't perfect. And I also look back on like the things I could have been doing better, and I try to like actively be more present and like make more of a priority and spending time with her and not focus so much on like doing my own things in my free time. Like just try to include her around because she really does just have me because she doesn't like have the work environment, and I've like made my friends and she hasn't had that yet. So she's just starting to get in that transition where she's making her friends and finding her people. So, but up to this point, it's just been like all she has is me. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, naturally, there's that abandonment wound. Like that is such a. I'm gonna eventually do an episode on like childhood development and the way that your relationship with your parents affects literally who you become for the rest of your life. But that abandonment wound is so like it goes so deep and it's so scary. And I get her. Like, I understand where she's coming from. All she knew was abandonment, and, she's just afraid of being put in that same position, But then at the same time, you're still a young adult, and you're trying to live your life and enjoy your 20s before you, have to commit to whatever. If you do end up having a serious relationship, or you do end up having kids, or you change careers and, you are going to be busier, like, you deserve to live your life. But that's even more of a testament to your character because there are sacrifices that you have to make to be there for her and to show up for her and to step up as kind of like a motherly figure to reassure her that, you're not going anywhere. Just because you go out and do this doesn't mean that, you're going to end up like mom and things like that. So your guys' relationship dynamic, is it more of like a best friend sibling, or is it more of like a mom daughter? Like that's got to be strange to navigate.
It's definitely interesting. I would say at first like I tried to be kind of like more of like the parent type thing, but it just didn't work. I feel like it's better as like I'm your like best friend, but also I'm still like your big sister. Like at the end of the day, I'm your big sister. And I feel like as like an older sibling, like you always kind of have that like almost like a parent vibe, but not. But
Yes.
like you want the best, you want to take care of them. Like those are your babies at the end of the day. Like I feel like it's more like that. Like I'm like, okay, anything you need, you can talk to me about anything. Like if you ever, it's like, you know how like when you'd like go out and like do something bad, you didn't want your parents to know, but it's like okay to tell your sibling. Like that's the kind of like relationship I try to have with her. Like if you ever like feel like you want to do something, then just talk to me about everything first. And I feel like we have like a really open relationship where we can just talk to each other about anything. So
Yeah.
and especially now that she's like turning into the adult side of things and she's like working and making her own money and we got her like a bank account and just kind of doing all the adult things. I feel like it's more of just like we're like besties now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's how it is with so me and Caden are 13 months apart. So that's just strictly like we're best friends. Like that's my best friend in the whole world. We fought like hell when we were younger, but now we're close. Me and Cash were 9 years apart as well. So that relationship, I feel what you're saying because, you know, me and Cash, no offense to Caden, but me and Cash are closer than Cash and Caden. So he will turn to me and come to me about like a lot of things. And there's been times where like he'll come to me and tell me things and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this information.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not a parent. I'm not ready to be a parent. Like, I get that he's coming to me and telling me things because, like, he might not feel comfortable telling my mom or my stepdad, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what the right thing is. Like, this is serious stuff, and I don't know what to do with this information. And so, you know, we kind of got over that bump and figured out, like, his little rough stage that he went through or whatever. But he'll still tell me some things, and I'll be like, you are too young to be doing that. Like, that is not okay. Like, yes, you can come to me and talk to me about things, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to shoot you straight. Like, I wasn't doing that shit when I was 12, 13, 14. Like, there's still a boundary. Like, I still see you as, like, my baby brother. And you telling me this stuff, I'm like, I'm going to tell you what I think. And, like, he doesn't always like to hear it because, you know, I'm not his mom. But I'm like, Cash, like, you got to check yourself at some point. Like, some of these things are not okay.
I feel like it's better coming from a big sister than a parent anyway. Because they know, like, you're not judging them and you mean the best for them. Like, you're just looking out for them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And, I mean, me and Caden, like, we've gotten into some shit, too, like, throughout us growing up. So it's not like our slate is clean. And we're closer, obviously, to his age than... So we remember what that was like much more vividly than our parents, like, remember what that was like. So I get the comfortability in talking to us, but that's even more of a reason where I feel like it should hold credibility because it's like, listen, I was your age once. I got into some shit. I'm not too far off. I'm still not perfect. I'm still fucking up and learning. But even I'm telling you that's not okay. So you should let that resonate a little bit more, you know, because parents are always going to be like, that's not okay. That's not okay. Yeah. But if I'm telling you it's not okay, you're really crossing the line there, brother. So check yourself. Have you guys struggled, like, was there kind of like a weird power dynamic, like where you would try and give her guidance like that and she'd be like, you're not my mom and anything like that? Or has it smoothed over? Like,
I would say just like the first like 6 months was like figuring out what the hell we were doing. Like, neither one of us knew. She had been like traumatized, was like finally going to be like in a stable environment, and just was like really resistant to like any type of structure because she just kind of like did her own thing and took care of herself for a while. So coming in, being with me and being like, okay, you have to go to school, you have to like log in and do these things. It was just like a struggle all around. And I also didn't really know how to like communicate with her in like a parent way. So I don't think I like was necessarily going about it in the right ways to get the response that would have worked. And those like first few months were not fun for anybody. And I just quickly figured out like, okay, the like strict parent side is not how this is ever going to work. Yeah. And also I'm never going to get the response out of her that I want. And she I just really let her like take kind of control over like what she wants out of life, and like finally just give her the freedom to like, okay, you're going to make your own choices. I'm going to support you through it 100%. But like, I'm not going to like pressure her into like pointing her life into a certain direction. I just want to like kind of let her have that like freedom to figure everything out on her own. Yeah.
Do you feel like this has kind of prepped you for being a parent? Like if you were to have kids?
Yes. I don't think necessarily like the young years, but I feel like once like the teenage phase hits, like I'll be good.
You're like, I know this
I'll
shit.
be good.
Which is usually the part that I think parents struggle with more than the early years. So you're like getting it out the way now. Good for you.
I'm like, no one will ever be as mean to me as my teenage sister.
Do you ever like have moments now as an adult, and now that you're kind of like on the other side of everything as much as you can be, where you think about it and get like emotional or get upset about all of it? Or is it just something like, do you feel resentment towards your mom if you really sit and think about it? Or is it all just things that you've accepted and kind of like moved on from?
I feel like I've really just accepted everything. I think sometimes, like, especially when I have to see my mom, I'll get like emotionally triggered. Like when she came out here, it was like really mentally draining, and there was lots of tears all around, and just it's hard to like see it. But I think when I don't have to be around her, I mean, she doesn't even want to talk to me, so it's just like much easier to compartmentalize. Like I've accepted like who she is, how she is. Super close with all my siblings. We talk like all the time, and I have like good relationship with like other parts of my family, so I feel like it's just really easy to like compartmentalize it and not like let it ruin my day to day or anything like that.
What are like the clearest ways that you see that it's made you a stronger person? How do you feel like it's made you more resilient or more anything, basically?
I feel like I'm very like leader. Like I take like a leadership role in a lot of things, and like I know how to do a lot of things that like people who have had their parents take care of them like all through college and supported them like don't know how to necessarily do. Like I've taken care of like all my own finances and been through multiple leases and like financed my own cars, took out like loans, and just done like a lot more of like the adult things that I think a lot of people my age who didn't have their parents forcing them to do that on their own and just had their parents kind of like take care of everything for them don't like feel as comfortable doing. Like I don't know if you ever see like the videos where it's like the mom is like forcing the kid to make a phone call and book a dentist appointment or something, and they're like traumatized. I'm like, I would be that friend who like my friends would be like,
I'll do it.
Yep. I'm like, okay, let me talk. Can I make this appointment? Like,
I'm the same way, literally. What advice would you give to someone who struggles with their relationships with one or both parents?
I don't know. I feel like I just kind of accept them for who they are and hope that they accept me for who I am. I would love to like develop a relationship with my mom later down the line. I just know I can't with the choices she's making right now. I have a good relationship with my dad. We talk pretty often. But yeah, I just feel like you can't pressure them to change if they want to be the way they are and do the things that they decide to do. That's just who they're going to be. And I think too, one thing with my parents especially, just I try to remember too, like they were kids when they had me, and so I don't like try to judge them too much for it, but I just feel like you just kind of take it for what it is.
One of the best things that I did for my relationship with my parents is realizing, like, humanizing them, right? And it's not something that I really feel like you have the capacity to do until you're further into your own adult years, right? Because as a kid, it's also not your responsibility to heal your parents or to figure out your parents' problems, right? Like, as a kid, they brought you into this world. It's their responsibility to take care of you and make you feel safe and loved and all of those things. But once you grow up and realize all the ways that you're fucked up and have your own problems, you can see the ways and the reasons why your parents are fucked up and have their issues, and they're human beings trying to figure it out as well. Doesn't mean that everything they've done to you is justified or okay, but it's also like you can come more from a place of compassion and understanding than a place of resentment. You definitely have to go, it's stages, you know, like you go through a stage where you're like, I hate you for doing this to me. I have all these problems because you couldn't just do this or love me this way or whatever. And that's a normal, healthy response to grief, or grieving like what you didn't have or the role that they didn't play. But I feel like I just have accepted my parents for who they are. And it has made it so much easier and so much simpler. And now I know like different boundaries that I need to have with them, you know, which parents I can go to for what things, what we're not going to talk about, the ways that I need to handle like different things. Like my mom listens to my podcast. I don't care. My mom has an attitude and I have an attitude because my mom has an attitude. So now it's like, have you seen that meme? There's this meme. There's memes going around on TikTok where it's like, you know, when you're an adult dealing with your parents' anger issues and versus when you're a child dealing with your parents' anger issues, and it's like when you're adult, it's that TikTok sound where it's like, bitch, you look a mess. And it's like, I can see now where it's like, all right, you're having a bad day. You're going through menopause. You had a bad client at work. I don't know what you got going on. It doesn't have shit to do with me, and I'm not sitting here and dealing with it.
Yep.
You married Chad. Go yell at Chad. He signed up to deal with it. I did not. So, you know, you just find different ways to kind of like manage your relationship with them. Unfortunately, in your situation, it's not so much about managing as it is from removing yourself from the situation, you know, which is unfortunate because you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm open to like pursuing a relationship later on, and I'm sure she'll get over her little phase she's having right now where she's just angry and hates everyone, but I'm just very careful about like how much I let it affect me. Yeah.
And that's another thing is managing like your own emotions internally and figuring out how to self-regulate, which when you're like us, I got to give you this book. It changed my life. I'm going to give you this book, but I'm going to save the name of it because I don't want to offend anybody, but I'll give it to you after.
Perfect.
But when you're like an internalizer is what they call it in this book. So the way that people cope with their emotions, there's externalizers and internalizers. That's how they group it. And let's start with externalizers. Externalizers wear it on their sleeve. They wear their emotions. They look to other people to fix their problems. Maybe they lash out. Maybe they throw tantrums. Maybe they crash out on people. Or they're very vocal and whiny. Or they look to other people to come save their problems. Internalizers are the exact opposite, where they suck in, like they turn in and they feel like they have to handle it all themselves and they can't ask for help. And like they're responsible. It creates hyper independence, right? So you just do everything yourself. You don't ask for help. You think everything is on you. The weight of the world is on your shoulders, right? So when it's people like us, like we struggle with the self-regulation because we have like that negative inner voice that's just like, you're doing everything wrong, or this is your fault, or you're not doing enough, and it's exhausting. So once you learn how to better regulate like your own internal system and process your own emotions in a way that's healthy, then that makes your relationships with people better too. Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't already cover, that we didn't already touch base on?
I feel like we talked about a lot.
Yeah, covered a lot of bases.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. It's never easy to like open doors to your personal life, especially like familial life and things like that. But I think that it's so important because it does play such a big role in who we are, right? And like once I start talking to people and hearing about like their background and where they come from and what their relationship with their parents is like and things like that, I see why they do certain things.
Yeah, you learn a lot more about them as a person, I feel like.
Yes. Yeah. And I can see like, okay, they're doing that because they had this relationship with whatever, you know, and then you can put your guard down, you can chill because you're not taking anything personally, or you can come from a place of empathy and like be there for that person. So it's important, I think, to have these conversations, hence my whole podcast. All right, well, thank you. If any of you would like to continue the conversation with Savannah or have any additional questions, I will have her contact information available on my social media platforms. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in 2 weeks to talk more elephants.